So we'll start now. Last class we have discussed about this, and I told you that banks are now moved from partial asset management when it was done earlier to partially liability management. After that, both together asset and liability management are being done, which are normally called integrated balance sheet management, where all the components of balance sheet and its different types of a mix are looked at and managed for the benefit of the bank, but towards in a profit angle only. So that was the meaning of asset liability management. Now we'll see that what is the definition of asset liability management. What does that definition, how we can define asset liability management? The definition says that asset liability management is planning. You have to plan, then you have to acquiring and directing the flow of fund. So it is about the flow of the fund through the organization in a proper way to maximize the profit. So flow of fund, we have understood that we have inflow and outflow fund. Inflow and outflow. So inflow of fund and outflow fund. When we are talking about the inflow of fund, this is about the fund, outflow fund. That means we are talking inflow of fund may happen at what are the inflow of fund for the bank? Can somebody tell what are the inflow of fund?
Deposits.
Deposits. Okay, deposits when we are depositors are depositing money inside the bank. So deposit accepted, that is a inflow of fund. And
installment of loans.
Very good. So when the repayment of loan is coming, repayment of loan are coming, that is also inflow fund. Similarly, outflow fund will be when the deposits are maturing, maturity of deposit, when the withdrawal of deposit will happen. Then when the loan disbursement of loans. Okay, so this inflow and outflow can be expressed in the way of fund only, or sometimes this inflow and outflow can be expressed in the form of, say, inflow and outflow. As far as our revenue is concerned, inflow of revenue, outflow of revenue. So inflow of revenue means, can you give me any example?
Deposit. Loan repayment.
Loan repayment, here we know that this is an inflow of fund. How this inflow of revenue comes?
Interest and advances.
Interest on advances and investment also. So outflow will be interest paid on deposit and borrowing. So basically this inflow and outflow can be expressed. Normally we see that fund only, but inflow and outflow can be seen in the way of revenue also. So where the revenue is going out, where the revenue is coming. So both are possible. Inflow and outflow, we can as that way. So inflow can be fund, inflow can be revenue also. Okay. So this is what the definition says, that asset liability management is to plan, acquire and direct the flow of fund. Flow of fund in the sense we are talking about fund. So how the inflow and outflow can be directed by the organization in a proper way to maximize profit. So basically, as I told you from the beginning, the objective of asset liability management is always to maximize the profit, enhance the profit, increase your profit. So that means what? It means that the ALM aims at to generate stable and adequate earning. So basically, profit means we call it earning. So every year, bank must generate a stable and adequate earning. Along with that, so earning has to be there. Along with that, banks has to build the equity of the organization. Equity means we know it's a capital. So you have to earn as well as you have to build the capital of the bank. Over time, when the business continues, through taking reasonable and measured business risk. So whatever the business risk is there, you have to take care of those risks. But the risk management we have discussed that thing. So it means that the stable and earning income has to be done by the bank by way of planning, acquiring, and directing the funds of the bank, and we should build the equity or capital of the bank over time through a process where we have to take care of the business risk which are there in the banking transaction. So those taking so we have to take care of the risk, as I told you, that is in risk management, as well as the risk which are pertaining to asset liability management. So asset liability management, I told you that normally credit risk, interest risk, and liquidity risk are the three main risks which are applicable. So we can say that again, asset liability management always focuses on the net interest margin. What is that? That means net interest margin has to be protected or enhanced. That means either whatever the net interest margin was there, you should maintain the same level or you have to increase that level. Suppose your net interest margin was X previous year. Previous year the amount was X and NIM was X. Either you maintain that X level or you add to that X level. X should not go below level. So ALM focuses on the NIM to protect or to enhance it. Next, it says the strategy of actively managing the composition and mix of asset and liability portfolio is called balance sheet restructuring. So here we are directing the flow of fund. That means we are managing the composition and mix of asset and liability. So basically, this is about the somebody's mic is on, some sound is coming. Can you please mute it? So basically, it means they are actively managing the composition and mix. Composition means what type of asset and liability you are having and how the type of asset and liability are mixed. As mixed in the sense, we can say that mix of asset, mix means what? Mix means mix can be the volume of the asset or liability you are having. Volume means you can say quantity. Then definitely second is about the maturity. Maturity means time period. So when you take into account these two together, this is called mix. See, means how much asset or liability you are having. Suppose whether asset and liability are having same tenure or say same quantity, or whether the asset and liability are having same maturity or not. So if that thing taken together, this is called the mix of asset and liability. So as I told you, ALM is therefore the management of net interest margin of the bank to ensure that level of net interest margin and the risk around it where the bank is doing the business remain very compatible with the ultimate objective of maximizing the profit. Okay, so it is not only about managing the asset and liability only, not only about managing the asset and liability, but also the bank should have an integrated approach of managing all the things together with different kinds of decision on the types of assets, types of asset and liabilities the bank is holding, totally what are the types of assets and liabilities, and definitely the mix of asset and liability, that is talking about volume and tenure. And also asset liability management also requires that the bank should have a clear understanding of the market in which the bank is operating, or the market area, which market area bank is operating. So according to that market area, you should decide what type of asset and liability you are holding and what is their mix and how to manage them to get the maximum profit. As I told you, asset and liability management means if the tenure of asset and tenure of liability as well as quantity of asset or volume of asset, volume liability are almost similar in nature, then you can have maximum profit. Maximum profit, or you can increase your NIM if these two things are possible. But it is not so. It is not possible. Because as far as the tenure is concerned, it is very much skewed. Nowadays, as I told you yesterday or before that nowadays the liabilities or the deposits which the banks are holding, maximum deposit are held in the tenure of 1 year period. So more than, say, around 70% of deposit will fall, 60 to 70% will fall in the 1 year period. Whereas in case of asset, you are giving loan up to 30 years period. Home loans are given up to 30 years period. So you take an average, you can see that it will be around 14 to 15 years. So it is a very much mismatched condition or disproportionate condition, because you are giving loan for a longer period with a very short term period of fund. That means after every 1 year, you are facing with funding or liquidity risk, as well as your rate of interest are changing very frequently. Both sides, rate of interest changing. So you also face interest rate risk. So these are the things which has to be managed. So for this purpose only, our net interest margin is thinning like anything. It is becoming slimmer and slimmer. The spread is very, very narrow. Spread is becoming very narrow because of the competition happening. That means what? Balance sheet restructuring means adjusting and readjusting the portfolio of asset and liability with the corporate objective of increasing the profit. Because we do not know what will be there in future, what will be the country's economic condition, what will be the future interest rate scenario, whether the interest rates will increase or decrease, because it's totally dependent on the RBI's rate of interest, RBI interest rate. So we do not know all those things, so we should be prepared to prevent any undesirable imbalance between the maturity, volume, and change in the rate of interest. Maturity and volume of the asset and liability, rate of interest of asset and liability. So this is the basic thing about asset liability management. So objective is to increase your profitability, or increase your NIM by managing the types of asset liability, mix of asset liability, and also rate of interest. So this is what the ALM means. Okay. Now, first, as I told you, ALM requires that match the asset and liability to minimize the liquidity and market risk. So ALM, as I told you, first we have to match the asset and liability as far as possible, as nearest as possible, because it is very difficult to match as far as the tenure is concerned. But if it is possible to match the volume, that is fine. Volume in the sense I am telling, suppose every asset, so ALM is directing the flow of the asset and liability, as I told you. So basically what happens, suppose we plot this liability and asset according to the maturity. Suppose we will take the different maturities. Different maturity of the liability and asset. Say we will take that 3 months maturity. We can say 6 month maturity. We can say 1 year maturity. We can say up to 3 year maturity, 1 year to 3 year, and above 3 year or 5 year. Like that, we can place all the things where the same liability and asset ages will be there. Okay, if it is possible. But as I told you, these are not so possible. So how close it is possible to manage those things, we may require that. So ideal condition is that if 3 months liability is matched with a 3-month asset, means this fund are available for 3 months, and this same amount of funds are given for asset which are also maturing after 3 months. So this is the ideal condition to get the maximum rate of interest out of it. But it is not going to happen. So how to manage those asset and liability as far as possible, as close as possible, so that the bank can minimize the liquidity risk as well as the market risk. This has to be done. So ALM is required to match the asset and liabilities and for the purpose of minimizing the liquidity risk and also as market risk. That means you have to match specific assets. First, you are going to give the loan. Whenever loan is given, you have to match that loan with the equal amount of liability which is available as far as maturity, volume, and rate of interest are concerned. 3 things always: maturity, volume, and rate of interest. We have to try to match all the 3 if it is possible. Otherwise, we can match it at the closest period. How close it can be possible. So that means how close it means. The thing is that the main aim is to minimize the imbalances between liability and asset as far as maturity, volume, and rate of interest is concerned. So that means it is not possible always to have the same thing about all the 3. So how close we can come, or how we can manage to we can manage the imbalances which might happen. So there should not be a drastic imbalance between this maturity or volume or rate of interest between asset and liability. So how it is possible to minimize the imbalances. So we can say how to minimize the imbalances. So the more you can minimize the imbalances, you can say that our profitability will be more. So this minimizing the imbalances of asset and liability is the management of asset and liability, or you can call that asset liability management. Okay. That each asset need to be matched with a liability in respect of maturity and volume that I told you. Despite that, if you at all match, suppose you are able to match this maturity and volume, but you do not have any control on the rate of interest. So what will happen? Suppose you manage that, but there is a change in the rate of interest. So due to change of rate of interest, and again the bank will face the problem. That means even if the asset and liability are matched, as far as the maturity volume are concerned, the interest rate can change during that period, which will affect the interest income from the asset and interest expenses on the liability. So, depending on the movement of that rate of interest, again the net interest margin might vary. So, this is what is the irony which is happening. Every day it is possible. So, ultimately the NIM will vary and affect the profitability. So how to manage those things? So basically primary goal is to control the income, control the interest income as well as expenses as far as possible. So you need to control the income and expenditures to manage the net interest margin. So basically if it is possible, you manage the maturity volume, but rate of interest will be there where there will be a change of this rate of interest, which ultimately will bring down the NIM. But after that is your primary goal is to control the interest income and control the expenses which is done by the bank, so that you can retain your NIM or protect our NIM effectively to achieve the business objective. Because our business objective under ALM is to either protect the NIM or to enhance it. Okay, so now we'll see that this is the main problem in ALM, how we are going to manage that, and how this ALM has become so significant in our banking thing. Gradually, it has come risk management, ALM, foreign exchange, treasury, everything is developing. Every business of the bank is aiming at increasing the profit, creating more capital, so that the business goes on. We can prevent any untoward incident in the bank, or the main aim is we should not fall into bankruptcy. Okay, so what are the reasons for growing significance of the ALM? So what are those reason or logic behind this ALM, which is accepted by all the banking and financial institutions? They are doing it. So main reason can be divided into 3 or 4 categories. Mostly these 3 categories, first 3 categories are main. So you can see that what is the volatility. Volatility, as I told you, that earlier the entire interest rates of the asset and liability was managed by RBI, but later on it was totally deregulated. Except few of the interest rate, all the rate of interest of the banks are individually decided. So this deregulation of interest rate has changed the dynamics of the financial market. Now, we may call that we are having a free economic condition or free economic environment in our country. And this free economic condition, this is definitely a good condition, but this free economic condition has affected so many things. Like this economic condition is affecting the money supply of the country. It is affecting the overall credit position by the financial institutions and banks in the country. Then it is also changed the exchange market, foreign exchange market. Now you can see that how the foreign exchange rates are moving up and down. Rather, it is always moving up, rupees declining. And also, it has also impacted the price level. Price level in the sense it is the interest rate. So, fluctuation of interest rate, fluctuation in the exchange rate. That means due to this, the cost and yield of our asset and liability, cost and yield. Yield is the income we are getting, cost is the outflow in the revenue. So cost and yield in our asset liability has been affected. Continuously it is affected. When this is affecting, when the cost is increasing more than the yield, then definitely our NIM is also affected by going down. So continuously the NIM might be shrinking. Because all these things, this is due to this volatility in the sense that all the things are changing. They have become volatile. Money supply changes, credit position changes, exchange market changes, price level is changing. So this is the nature of the things which is happening in the market. So market has become totally volatile. So in this situation, only way to have an effective asset liability management. So that is the first reason. Second reason is the product innovation. So you may see that day by day, when it is banking thing is entering, every day we are entering, there is a change of need of the people or the customer. Needs are changing according to different tastes and caste, creed, or you can say the income group, whatever it may be. Taste is changing. So people want new product. The same product are not going to be sold by the bank. Some products are becoming obsolete. So for that purpose, banks are going with a rapid innovation of product. So rapid product innovation is happening day after day, because it is based on the need of the customer. So for that purpose, either you are introducing new products, or if it is not possible or not feasible that new products is not required, you are modifying the existing product. You are modifying the existing product with little bit of changes day after day. Because people will like that. The old thing are going concept. Like you see the iPhones, Apple iPhones. Every 2 years, 1 year, after 1 year or 2 years, new iPhones are launched and the people are holding this old thing, they dispose them up and they buy the new iPhone. Because they know that some extra features will be there. I am holding this iPhone which has become old, so I have to discard it. So their life, this iPhone's product life cycle is very slow, very short. Bank's product might be also becoming like that. So you have to change the product. New products or modify that. So when such modification or such new products are launched by the bank, ultimately what happens? Definitely cost is there. When you modify or new products are launched, cost will be involved. Secondly, whenever new things are coming, you do not know what are the risks there. What are the risks associated in such new product? So there will be ultimate impact is on the risk profile of the bank. So when it is ultimately affecting, then definitely our NIM is also affected. So for that purpose, again, ALM become important. Third thing is regulatory environment. Regulatory environment, you know about that. We have studied in risk management that as per the recommendation of BCBS or banks of say international state settlement, they have provided a framework, Basel framework, for the banks to tackle all the three major risks. Or we can say, as far as ALM is concerned, definitely to target or to tackle the market risk, through which there might be rate fluctuation of rate in the market rate, and simultaneously there might be a credit risk also. So interest risk and credit risk are two things which have become more concerned about for the bank. So this has prompted the regulator RBI all over, say all over our country, or you can say all over the world. All the regulators of banking have tried or are trying to develop all the asset liability management policies in their banks. Fourth is about management recognition. So bank management, individual banks management, top management has now come to realize that it is not good enough to have a good credit product or a good liability product only. But there is a need to maintain a position of the bank to relate and link the asset side with the liability side properly, so that we can minimize the imbalances in asset and liability side. So that means the management has recognized or realized that the positive result of the ALM is always there. So that's why management focuses on ALM, efficient ALM thing in the bank. So there is a ALM department separately working in every bank's head office. Because now the management knows that the risk in the financial business has changed the entire game altogether. Okay, so these are the four things which are given, which is actually the thrust was there, so that every bank or a regulator, they should have the ALM intact in the bank if they want to continue the business and if they want to increase the net interest margin. Okay, so this is about what are the reason behind significance, growing the significance of the ALM in the banking area. Okay. Now we'll see that what is the purpose and objective. Already I have told you, again I am telling, purpose is through ALM policies, banks should review the interest rate structures. So that's why you see every 15 days or 10 days or maybe in a month period, your bank is coming out with change in the interest rate in the deposit side as well as liability side. Okay, so apart from that, banks should examine the loan and investment portfolio also. So these are the asset side. Loan and investment portfolio should be also examined as far as credit risk as well as market risk is concerned. Then examine the credit risk and contingency that may originate. This is about the loan, and contingency risk means what is your plan to have the funding with you, or if you have any plan that if such funding risk or liquidity risk is faced by you, you have any contingency plan that in future some arrangement has been made with some financial institution or bank that easily you can get the fund from them on a borrowing basis. Okay, so that is the thing. Next is review the actual performance. You have done this, examined all this, and you have to review the actual performance of the bank as regard all the things, and accordingly you can change your strategy and change the different type of thing. So basically, we can see that purpose and objective of a effective ALM technique should aim at managing the things like, as I told you, this should be managed. Contingency is emergency. It is about emergency. In emergency, suppose there is a shortfall of fund. What is your contingency plan? Do you have any arrangement in the market to get the fund? Do you have some corporates who can help you at the time of your funding risk happens or liquidity happens? If not, corporates are not there. Do you have any banks or financial institution which are with a good rapport with you? Immediately they can give you a fund for 2 days or 3 days at a very lesser rate of interest, because RBI always will tell you that I will give you money at repo rate, whether below repo rate any money is available. If such arrangement can be made, they are called contingency plan. Okay. So I was explaining that the effective ALM technique aims at managing the volume of asset and liability. Volume means quantity. Second is, it is also about the mix of the asset and liability, or we can say it is mix. Mix means volume as well as the maturity or tenure. Whenever maturity and tenure are called, then what is the mix? Then it is about the rate of interest. So we can say that rate sensitivity of the asset and liability, how much they are rate sensitive. Fifth is about the quality of the assets, particularly quality of the assets. Means you should have a good loan portfolio. NPA will be again decreasing or NIM. So quality of assets are there. And definitely you should have liquidity in your bank, so that no funding risk is happening. Because if you planned for a liquidity, definitely you are not going to depend on borrowing, which is costly. Because more and more borrowing means your NIM again decreasing. That means our prime objective is to increase our NIM or protect the NIM. So basically all these to manage all these things is the main objective of ALM. With the main objective, we as a bank's objective is to target, to achieve the target reward or target return. The bank should achieve the target return. What is our target of achieving that return? Because all these are all concerning, all these parameters are having different kinds of risk. So you have to achieve that targeted return with the accepted risk associated with the banking business. So this has led the banks to follow the following steps. These steps to, so you have to review the rate of interest structure and compare the same to the pricing of both asset and liability. You have to examine the loan and investment portfolio in the light of different categories like your foreign exchange risk, your liquidity risk. So many things are there. So you have to examine those portfolios also. Then you have to see that credit risk. No, you have to control the NPS. And also you have to control the credit quality along with the rate sensitivity. That means the rate of interest, if changes in the income side, that is our asset side, then it will also impact our NIM. And finally, you have to review the actual performance against the projection or target which is set by the bank every year. And you can, through this review, you can analyze that what are the reasons for which we could not achieve that target, so that in future our strategy can be changed. So basically we are saying that which are the parameters, normally which are the parameters, which are the key parameters under this ALM. So basically there are three parameters which are taken into consideration while stabilizing the asset liability management. What are those parameters? These parameters, you know, they are the net interest income, net interest margin, and economic equity ratio. Net interest income, you know, net interest income is nothing but interest earned by the bank less interest spent by the bank. So whatever the interest we earn and what is the interest we spend, the difference is called net interest income. Okay. Then comes net interest margin. So net interest margin is calculated by this formula. Net interest income divided by what is your average total earning asset. So from earning asset, so whatever the assets bank is having, whatever the assets bank is having, out of this asset, we have to select the earning asset only, where we are earning. Some of the assets are there, we do not earn all those things. So those has to be taken out of this. So the total of earning assets at the beginning of the year, say on 1st of April, what is the balance of those earning assets? Add that with the balances on 31st March of next year, the earning assets. Total divided by 2 is the average of total earning asset. So you have calculated your net interest income by getting the total interest earned minus total interest spent. So that figure divided by your average total earning asset multiplied by 100 can be a percentage. So that will be a percentage which is expressed as NIM. NIM is also known as spread of the bank, or we can call that is a margin of the bank. So higher the spread, more the margin, you can say. Higher the spread, higher the margin of the bank. So you have to increase that spread. Because this, how it will increase? Basically, it will increase if your NII is increasing, because NII is the numerator. If it is stabilized or decreased, then your NIM is going to increase. So we have also discussed in risk management that higher the risk, there is a probability of higher return. Higher risk, probability are two things: high return as well as high loss also. This is possible. So that's why I've told you earlier that risk is directly proportional to reward. More risk you take, possibility of more return is there. So that means if you take into consideration this logic, we can interpret this otherwise, that if you need higher return, you have to take higher risk. Because here we are aiming at higher return only. So if you require higher return, unless you enter into high risk business, it is not possible. So when you are aiming at increasing the NIM or increasing the spread, that means we are enhancing our risk exposures also. And with this objective of increasing or enhancing the NIM or increasing the profitability, it requires management of all inherent risks while doing the banking business, and not averting or eliminating the risk. Because the risk has to be there. Unless you take higher risk, higher return might not be there. Vasla, what is your question? A VG asset, please. What is VG asset? I could not get your question. Have you typed clearly, or can you repeat that? Can you type it out again? Average asset. Okay. Average earning asset. It's not asset. It is written, see, I have written there average earning asset. So basically earning side is from the asset side, From the asset side, we are earning only. Our earning takes place in the asset side. And the asset side components we have discussed. The asset side components have some assets which are not earning for the bank. Like cash. Cash is not earning anything for the bank. Fixed asset, they are not earning anything from the bank. So only we can say the loan and advances and certain things, other things, say investment and certain other things are the only earning assets. So how to calculate this NIM? So basically it is about the NII divided by average total earning asset. So you have to take at the beginning of the year, say 1st April 2021, you have taken the balance of this earning asset. Earning asset you have taken. And after the year is ending, the 31st March 2022, you have taken the balance of this earning asset. You have added these two. Whatever thing is come, you divided by 2. Because 2 figures you have taken divided 2, that becomes your average total earning asset for that year. Okay, is that clear now? Okay. Now, so average earning asset I told you. So this is the thing which bank is going through with the corporate objective of increasing or protecting the net interest margin or to increase the profitability. It is required by the bank that you have to manage all the risk associated with the business, because we have to enter into high risk business, otherwise we cannot increase the profit. So we should not always think that we should avoid the risk or avert the risk or eliminate the risk. No, it is not possible. You have to do certain business with risk taken into concern. Otherwise, it is not possible to bank to stay in the business. So ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, State Bank of India, Bank of India. So why they are becoming their business, they are showing more profit, or they are achieving the success in their transaction and banking thing, because that thing of managing the risk and entering into more risky business thing with all the risk management perception is the key to success in the banking business. If you cannot do this, then it is not possible. Okay. And third is your economic equity ratio. This is about this is represented as shareholders fund or your equity capital divided by the total asset. So what is your total shareholder fund? That is equity capital divided by this. So at the end of the business, you can calculate that what is this ratio. This ratio is called economic equity ratio. This ratio gives you that how healthy your bank is, or you can say that economic equity ratio assesses the sustenance capacity of the bank. If the ratio is healthy, then you can say that bank may go on doing the business. Sustenance capacity, how long the business will continue. As long as this economic equity ratio is better, so there is an indicator parameter will be there up to this is healthy. So if it is more than that parameter, then we can say that the sustenance capacity of the bank is good. Bank can continue with this business. So sometimes questions are asked, what does economic equity ratio measures? So you can say it measures the sustenance capacity of the banks. So what is the ratio? How it is calculated? It is calculated as the ratio between shareholders funds to total asset. Sometimes they will ask what is NIM. So NIM is calculated as this. NII divided by a average total earning asset. So if they give you question with asset and liability figure, then definitely you have to exclude those assets which do not earn a single thing for the bank. Okay. Now I see that how this is done. This ALM is carried out in the banks. At what level? Some different level is we can divide the level of the bank as two categories at macro level and micro level. Macro level is the top management level. Top management level. The second is micro level, means where the groundwork or the branches which operate, who do the business. Branch level. Micro level, this is called. So how it can be done? ALM practices to be followed by the entire bank. So how these are done at macro level and micro level. So macro level or the top management, as we have discussed in the risk management, so what is their role? Top management role. Similarly, here also ALM top, as far as ALM is concerned, top management level, the job is to formulate the policy. ALM policy formulation. They will design the policy. They design the policy regarding what are the critical business as far as our bank is concerned, which are the high earning business, which banks should do. So entire how we are going to manage the asset and liability. So entire thing will be there in the policy. So they will be preparing the policy or design the proper policy. Second is that this policy is designed with the aim to increase our NIM. So profitability will be increased. So along with that, second objective is efficient allocation of the capital. So equity has to be also increased. Not only profit to be increased, you have to allot amount of capital. And thirdly, definitely, when this policy formation you are doing, what are the critical business you are deciding? So you have to also think about what is different types of product and services you are going to product or services you are going to offer to the customer. What are the new things? Designing a product, designing of services with appropriate price changes. Price changes. So that price changes has to be done every now and then, according to the market, how the market is behaving, so that your NIM is increased. So this is basically the macro level or the top level. Now at micro level, there are two things to be done. One is called price matching, second thing is liquidity. So at the ground level, the objectives of ALM is of twofold nature. So one is price matching, second is liquidity. Price matching means if you can do that at the branch level, if they follow this price matching thing, then definitely profitability will be more. Profitability will be more. So price matching means what? Price of asset and liability if they match. If the branch, see, as a whole bank can do that, but if the branch also maintains that, means branch is trying to maintain the spread. Maintain the spread, ensuring the deployment of liabilities will be at a higher rate. So whatever the deposit rate we are paying. So we know that average deposit rate might be say 4 to 5%. Suppose average deposit rate the bank is paying 4 to 5%, and so many things are there: operating expenses, repo rate, so many things are. So we know that if you bank has decided that MCLR should be say at 9% or 8%. So that means this is suggesting that any loan which is given above MCLR is a good thing for the bank, because we are earning a little bit more. So that means whatever the rate of interest you are paying to a depositor, while you decide to give a loan at a branch level, always aim for a getting a little bit more than your MCLR. Meaning the accepted deposit need to be lent at a higher rate with margin. So this will indicate whether there will be a position to benefit from the future rate of interest in a scenario where the future rate will be changing. Means whether bank is going to benefit if there will be a increase in the deposit rate. Because increase in the loan rate would be no problem. It is always acceptable or welcome. But if the rate of interest in the deposit side increases, so how we can manage the margin? Is it possible? So that's why the branches should always aim for giving loans which has got higher interest rate. It is not that always enter the one branch is always trying to give housing loan only. So if you give housing loan, now housing loan is totally competitive in nature. So you cannot provide a housing loan at 7% interest right now. So if it is less than 7%, then your margin is decreasing to 2% only. So that means you are not recovering your operating expenses even. So if the bank focuses only giving housing loan because he sees that it is the safest thing we'll do, then this branch is not doing and not helping the bank to increase the profitability. Yes, you do housing loan, but side by side, you have to also give some kind of business loans like CC, OD, or some kind of foreign exchange loan where exporter, so that at least 10% or 11% interest you are earning. So this is about the ground level. The branches should look at the price matching thing. Okay, so because we know that in future the interest rate will vary. Both sides it will vary. So you have to look at that gap. That is called your gap, adjusted gap. We'll learn about that adjusted gap. Adjusted gap is nothing but the difference between the asset and liability interest rate. This is the adjusted gap. What is the amount of asset and liability and their gap as far as the volume is concerned, as far as the rate of interest earning is concerned. So always the position will be the asset position should be always more than liability as far as the earning is concerned. That is a benefit. So we'll discuss that when we'll discuss the thing. So basically this is the price margin. Second thing is about liquidity. Liquidity means basically we should at a branch level how you are going to help in liquidity. Liquidity means if you can canvas deposits which are of higher maturity. Means you can canvas more than 1 year deposit. That is very nice. Because as I told you, normally everybody keeps the deposit either 1 year or less than 1 year. So if you have more longer deposit period, that means you are helping the liquidity of the bank. Means liquidity is ensured or maintained by grouping the asset and liability based on their maturity profiles. So banks has to see the gap between those type of deposits they are holding and those type of assets they have created. The gap is then assessed to identify the future financing requirement also. However, due to maturity mismatch, there will be a variation in the expected result. So we can say that as far as possible, the liquidity can be also managed by the ground level or micro level. Okay. So these are the different objectives of ALM. Now we'll enter into that ALM thing one by one, where some numerical things will come. Before that, I want to just explain little bit of things which pertains to your Basel guidelines. Basel guidelines in the risk management where we have not covered certain things. Few things I have not covered in the risk management, which is there in the balance sheet management. We have to look into that. Okay, so that is about some Basel guidelines, some of the things. So we know that pillar 1, pillar 2 and pillar 3. So what they say, I have already told you. Pillar 1 speaks of the capital requirement. What is the minimum capital prescribed by the regulator? Or we can say that minimum capital requirement or minimum capital MCR is prescribed by regulator to maintain a risk sensitive capital for the bank for all three major risks: credit risk, operational risk and market risk. Second pillar is about supervisory review process. Means this SRP, supervisory review process, prescribes a suitable risk management system in the banks and it's reviewed by the regulator from time to time. So supervisory authority should review the process of individual banks' suitable risk management state system they are following so that they adhere to the Basel principle and their minimum capital requirement is fulfilled. Wherever such things are not done by the bank, so regulator will take care of that and either they will penalize or they will help the bank to achieve that level of minimum capital requirement. And third is market discipline. As I told you, it prescribes for increased transparency or the enhanced disclosures. We can call that enhanced disclosure with respect to the supervisory review process. Whether the bank, whatever the bank is doing, whether they are making it known to the public or not. Okay, so basically when you see that why I am talking about this, that there are 17 principles applicable for pillar 1 and pillar 2. Total 17 principles as far as the pillar 1 and pillar 2 are concerned. There are 13 principles in pillar 1 and 4 principles in pillar 2. Basically, we should not be worried about these 13 principles. In as far as this second pillar is concerned, that is supervisory process, little bit of things we should know. Sometimes questions are. So we should be more concerned about these 4 principles. We should know what are these 4 principles are. These 4 principles are supervisor specific. It relates to the supervisor review process. So what are these principles? So principle 1, 2, 3, 4. The SRP pillar 2, this has 4 principles. So first principle says that assessment of overall capital adequacy has to be done by the bank as per its risk profile. As per the risk profile of the individual bank, they should do this. They should maintain that capital adequacy ratio or minimum capital requirement. Means if the risk profile of a bank is higher, like an aggressive bank doing business in the country like SBI or ICICI Bank or HDFC Bank, in those cases, it says that they should have a matching capital adequacy ratio. So their capital adequacy ratio should be much more higher than the weaker bank, a smaller bank. So it says that overall capital adequacy ratio maintenance or minimum capital which is required to maintain by the bank depends on the risk profile of the bank or the strength of the bank, whether it is a stronger bank or weaker bank. According to that, you maintain, you keep your CR in that. If you say that as per RBI prescription, only 11.5% is the requirement of CR. So if every bank is uniformly keeping 11.5, it might not be good for all the bank, because for State Bank of India, if you say it is a very huge bank with huge turnover, huge of loans given by the loan portfolio, investment portfolio. For them, it is required that they should maintain a better level than 11.5%. They can go up to say 13% or 14%. So that level is prescribed by RBI, says that you have to keep more, because at any time when some problem happens, some crisis enters into banking, your business, then definitely you will face more challenges of losses. So to cover the losses, at least a little bit of more capital is required. So this is told by principle 1. Principle 2 says RBI supervisor will review from time to time, they will evaluate, and definitely through this they were constantly they will be constantly monitoring the bank's capacity to maintain this capital. So basically that thing is called bank's internal capital adequacy assessment process, ICAP. How the bank is maintaining this capital adequacy. So that is done through a process which is called bank's internal capital adequacy assessment processes, or we can say that bank's internal capital adequacy assessment strategies. They will be monitoring that strategy or that process of maintaining this capital adequacy. If a regulator finds that it is unsatisfactory, they will take appropriate actions. They will impose different types of actions. Maybe those actions are called prompt corrective actions. PCA will be introduced into the bank. Some restriction will be there. Okay. Third thing is principle 3. Principle 3 is that supervisor always, or the RBI as the regulator always expects that banks should maintain a little above the capital adequacy ratio level. Means if it is 9%, you should maintain a little bit, or if it is 11.5%, you should always carry at least 12% or 11.8%. You should not stick that exactly you calculate 11.5 is required, I will maintain that. It is not advisable. So as a supervisor, RBI expects that banks should maintain the CAR or capital adequacy ratio above the minimum capital requirement level. That is about the principle 3. Last one is the principle 4. Principle 4 is that RBI as a regulator always wants to help the banking system. So they should intervene. RBI will be intervening at an early stage where RBI, through its review, evaluation and monitoring, finds that the bank is not able to maintain that minimum capital requirement, or at an early, so intervention of RBI should be at a very early stage, so that RBI can prevent the minimum capital requirement or capital adequacy ratio level to fall further. RBI will immediately start some corrective actions. RBI will advise you, the committee which is there in RBI, they will advise you what to do or what is wrong has happened, so that corrective actions can be taken before it is late, so that the capital adequacy ratio of the bank can be restored. So this is in the principle 4. So banks, I can say that banks have equal responsibilities toward each of the principle, because this principle 4 principle are always, we are seeing that this is the regulators' advice to the banks, what to do and how to do it. But according to this, individual banks have equal responsibilities towards each of the principle. Okay, so this is important. And as far as this is concerned, we should know about little bit more in the ICAP or internal capacity internal
Sir, please explain
capital.
principle 4, sir.
Principle 4 is, see, principle 4 is about, suppose RBI as a supervisor feels that X bank is lagging behind. X banks is lagging behind. It is, his bank is struggling to achieve that 9% MCR level or 11.5% capital adequacy ratio plus your CCV level. So because RBI is constantly monitoring, reviewing everything under principle 2. So they will be knowing that this bank is struggling. So maybe in the next year it will be still struggling. So at early stage, RBI will step into this bank's role. They will advise the bank. So they will intervene at an early stage to prevent the MCR to fall further. Because after their intervention, some corrective actions can be taken. Corrective actions can be taken by RBI or RBI's help. The bank will take all these corrective actions to restore this capital adequacy ratio to 9% or 11.5% rate, whatever it is. So that is the principle 4. Okay. Now we'll little bit more discuss about the internal capital assessment process. What is this? This is according to principle 2 of SRP. So in the entire bank, so in the bank, the entire ALM process, whatever the ALM processes, who decides these processes? Basically, there is a committee called ALCO. Asset Liability Committee is there. So this Asset Liability Committee decides the entire process of asset liability management. So, however, RBI has directed the banks to have apart from ALCO, banks should have this ICAP also. Banks should have a ICAP team. So this ICAP team will be always on a continuous basis, will assess the achievement of that capital adequacy ratio. So basically ICAP, what is ICAP team will do? ICAP comprises a bank's procedures and measures. What the bank should adopt, those type of procedure or those type of measures which are designed specifically to maintain the appropriate level of minimum capital ratio in relation to the bank's profile. And you should develop your risk management policy, or suitable risk management policy should be adopted in this by the bank's management. And always it is open for supervisor's review. Means a regulator is open to review this one to evaluate the ICAP process or how the ICAP is functioning in the bank. And if necessary, the regulator can take appropriate measures or prudential measures, and other supervisory actions can be taken. So this is the basically ICAP thing. So normally procedures and measures will be there. So you have to identify and measure the risk so that you are maintaining the required appropriate level of MCR, and continuously your ICAP should be advising the risk management department so that banks should adopt a suitable and modern, as per the time required, as per the market which is required, that risk management policy should be there. And definitely supervisor will be always open to review and evaluate banks ICAP process from time to time by conducting an independent assessment of the bank's risk profile. And if necessary, the regulator may take appropriate prudential measures and other supervisory action to maintain that MCR level. So this is about the internal capital assessment. And what is the structural aspect? So basically this is about every bank to have the ICAP, which is a board approved procedure. So what their main aspect of doing these things, they should always look for a tolerance level setting. I think in risk management, I have told about this tolerance level. If you remember, I have told about risk appetite, tolerance level, and what is the high risk I have already given. So that tolerance level setting is done by this ICAP committee. Next, establish a risk framework. So they will be knowing about how to maintain this capital adequacy ratio, the adequate ratio. So what are the risks? Still new risks are coming, and how to manage the risk. So they should advise the risk management department to design a suitable risk management policy for that. So whatever changes is required. So basically, whenever such risks are coming into picture, new risks are coming. So how to manage those new risk exposure, how to monitor the same according to the risk management policy of the bank, so that we can maintain bank's capital at a good level. Then to monitor the bank's risk, monitor the compliance angle. Compliance angle in the sense that whatever the risk the RBI wants, RBI always wants, RBI monitors, evaluates. So certain things are there, you have to comply with RBI's prescription. So whether you are complying or not, you have to submit those reports to RBI from time to time, so that RBI will be satisfied that yes, you are complying with all the strategies, all the things required. Then adopt and support a strong internal control. So internal control, what are the internal controls your bank is having to protect the bank from future losses? So basically ensuring, and say I can say that appropriate strategic plan to be there for the bank, where you can assess what is bank's present and future capital need, and what is the bank's anticipated capital expenditure in future, along with bank's desired level of capital, how it is the minimum capital required more than the MCR. So you ensure that the ICAP will ensure that you should have a written policy and procedure in the place as far as this ICAP is internal capital adequacy assessment process is concerned. And they should submit a periodical reports to the bank's board from the time to time. So that bank's board will be approving that yes, we are doing fine here. And the summary of that report is also submitted to RBI. So ICAP is a very important department of the bank. Okay. So as far as setting of tolerance levels, I told you these are the few things you should remember, that you have to set up the net funding requirement at a certain percentage. So that means you have to, this ICAP, as per ICAP, they will advise the ALM department that what is our funding requirement in future. According, if you have plotted all your liability and assets according to the different time period, you know how much is the gap. Suppose liability is 100, but assets are say 120. That means say 1 year period, at the 1 year period gap is that 100 is the liability available, 120 will be the asset. That means you have a negative gap of 20. So liability is only available 100, whereas your asset is 120. You have made some commitment that time, some loans will be given. So 20 rupees shortfall of the fund is there. So where from you will arrange that 20 rupees? So this is called the funding arrangement. You should be prepared today for next year, 1 year. After 1 year, you require this 20 rupees. How you are going to manage? So for that, you should maintain some percentage of that net stable funding requirement I told you in risk management. If you have maintained that net stable funding ratio, then this problem will be solved. This liquidity crisis will be solved. So that to have a cumulative net funding requirement at a certain level of the total liabilities over a particular period. Maybe it might be for 7 days, it might be for 3 months, it might be for 6 months, it might be 1 year or more than that. What as per the requirement you have to do. This requirement is always in a continue. Every day bank prepares these statements, which is called structural liquidity statement. Structural liquidity statement. We'll discuss in detail. Some numerical problems comes on this. We will discuss that in detail. Bank has to prepare a structural liquidity statement and bank submits it to RBI fortnightly. This is a statement where your asset and liabilities are plotted as outflow or inflow according to the different maturity tenure of the liability assets. This maturity are plotted in a row wise thing. So this statement is also called, this is prepared according to the maturity ladder. So RBI has given a 10 bucket maturity ladder. So first, second, third, 10. So 10 different maturity levels are there. You have to place your amount of liability, all these things. So quantity and here the time, the maturity is there. Accordingly, we can see that difference is the gap, whether you have a positive gap or negative gap. If positive gap is there, means that is no problem at all. If negative gap is there, as far as fund is concerned, then you should be worried because it is a liquidity problem for the bank. Okay, so you have to set up those things, net funding requirement, set up the limit for credit for delegate levels, that is the sanction limit and the discretionary power which is given. That has to be also set up by this day. Then consideration for marketability, price volatility or drop in price for forced sale of assets. Means you have to be also ready whether there is any sale of assets to be done by you in your investment portfolio or any other portfolio. When there is a situation where you are forced selling those assets, where you will expect that return will be very much less. So you have to see that how far this investment you are holding, that how far they are marketable. So that means your mismatches should be calculated by taking the marketability of liquid assets within a discount to cover the price volatility. And any drop in price is there in future where you are going to force sale, that has to be taken into concern because there will be a loss at that time. And liquid assets of the bank should be kept at a certain level. You should decide at what percentage we should keep the liquid assets of the short-term liabilities. Means the liquid asset means those assets which are easily converted within a very short time to cash. So what are the short-term liability? How much is the short-term liability? Short-term liability means which are normally less than 1 year period. How much the amount is there? So suppose your short-term liability say 100 is there. So it is always desirable that you should maintain the liquid asset at 100. Because whenever you want to make the payment, you need this asset. Because you have to dispose of this asset to pay back these short-term liabilities when they are going to mature. Otherwise, if you cannot pay, then again you have to borrow money and pay them. So borrowing is costly. Slightly, you have to have a limit on the loan to deposit ratio. What is the loan to deposit ratio? That is, loan to deposit means loan is the asset and deposit is the liability. What is the loan amount to the deposit amount? Whether it is in a healthy loan to deposit ratio or it is a skewed one, adverse one. Then you have to have a loan to capital ratio also. Because if the capital is not increasing proportional to the loan, then definitely the ratio is going down. So you have to maintain that ratio. Then you should have primary sources for meeting the funding needs. That means either you have some depositor with you or some corporates with you which can provide funds to you at the emergency level, or you should have made some arrangement with some banks and financial institution where they have agreed you have a good rapport with them so that In case of need, they will provide you the fund at a reasonable rate and manage the mismatch level as prescribed by RBI. So this is the most important thing for ALM, how to manage the mismatch. Through that structural liquidity statement, or you can call that the residual maturity profile of the residual maturity means how long the assets are going to be there when they are going mature and when the liabilities are maturing. So they are called this time, the time which is left is called residual maturity dates. So the residual maturity profiles of asset and liability will be such that the bank should minimize the imbalances, or we can say that the mismatch should be very, very less. So RBI, when we do that structural liquidity statement, RBI is concerned about the short-term liquidity crisis. Short-term liquidity crisis. Short-term liquidity crisis means normally up to 1 month period. Up to 1 month period, RBI is more concerned. As I have told you in risk management, that was a liquidity coverage ratio to be maintained by the bank, which prescribes that the shortest for 30 days liquidity crisis can be avoided. So here also, in this ALM also same thing. RBI is concerned about the 1 month period only. So RBI says that in this 1 month period, there are 4 time buckets. Time buckets means maturity profiles given by RBI. There are 10 time buckets given. So within this one month period, there are 4 time buckets. So first is 1 day. Second might be 1 to 7 days, or then 8 to 14 days, like this. So 4 buckets will be there, for which RBI is more concerned. RBI says that you should always try to match these 4 as far as possible. But it is very difficult to that. For that reason, RBI has prescribed that maximum mismatch for these 4 time bands of the short-term nature is first one, RBI says it will be 5%, second one 10%, third is 15% and 20%. So RBI allows that up to 1 month period, maximum mismatch is allowed as 20. It cannot be more than that. If it is more, then you have a problem. You have to manage that thing. If you keep it this level, then it is manageable for you. So these are the different processes of ALM and ICAP. And finally, last one thing I tell that this review of ICAP should be done by the board of the bank. And sometime question comes, so it says that at least once a year, the board of directors should assess and document whether the process relating to the ICAP implemented is successfully achieving the objectives or not. So ICAP has to be reviewed by the board at least once a year. And after such assessment, appropriate changes in the ICAP should be incorporated if there is a need to do that. And another thing is, remember about that, ICAP operates on a principle which is called the principle of proportionality. So the implementation of ICAP should be guided by this principle of proportionality. It means that whatever according to the nature of business, according to the scope of business, according to the scale of business, and according to the degree of complexity of business followed by the individual bank, whatever the bank, how this bank is doing, what is the nature of this bank, what is the scope of business of the bank, what is the scale of the business bank, and what is the different types of complex nature of business bank is entering. So according to that thing, the bank should adopt this principle. So as I told you, stronger banks should have a stronger capital because their business approach is totally aggressive. So it means that the migration and adoption of progressively sophisticated approaches should be aligned with the nature of business, scope of business, scale of business, and what are the complexity of business you are doing. And banks should always assess the future losses based on past experiences. So you should always see that for the last 5 years, 3 to 5 years, what is your losses happened? In which area bank has lost more? Consider the largest losses during the last 3 to 5 years. So that is based on past experience. If any it is there, then you should strategize in near future that such losses should not occur or they should not repeat again. Identify and list the areas of business facing the most risk. So prepare the list of most significant risk-prone areas to which bank is exposed, because those areas to be taken care of by the bank more, because losses are expected more in those areas. Then plan and strategize the management of the capital for the next 5 years. So consider how the bank's capital management is to be done, how much capital you should allocate to your bank's kitty, so that in the 3 to 5 years all the strategies will be fulfilling the criteria of capital adequacy requirement. So this is about the basic the thing which we have not discussed in risk management. So today we'll end here. Tomorrow we'll enter into liquidity risk management as well as interest risk management, all the things which are covered. So tomorrow certain things will be there where you should be also using some numericals. I'll let you know how to prepare those things. This question will be asked on that. So how the structural liquidity statement is done, how this gap is calculated, what is the if the rate of changes, then what is the impact on the net interest margin, how to calculate those things. We'll discuss it that tomorrow. So if you have any, if your concept is clear now about the gap and other things, tomorrow it will be helpful that easily you can understand those things. So now if you have any question, ask me. Otherwise, we'll say good day today. If you have written down any questions to be asked, ask me. Because today, whatever we have discussed, mostly theoretical questions will come. So, you should be, if you read the book, those chapter, again, it will be stored in your head. So, there is no problem to revise also. Any question, you can unmute. I have allowed you to unmute. You can unmute and ask me.